female pilot. Please welcome Major Michelle Curran of the United States Air Force Thunderbirds.
So the flying on the Thunderbirds was the most fun I did in my career. But as I reflected on it, I realized that there was something that I enjoyed even more. And that was being in a position to inspire other people. Suddenly finding myself in a spot where I could encourage others to work with the people around them towards a common goal, to chase down a big dream and to overcome obstacles, that was by far the most rewarding thing I had ever experienced.
And was given the responsibility of teaching others. Brick by brick, they built a runway. When something came by that I wanted to go after, I could launch myself and go for it.
I'm so excited today to have Michelle Curran with us. Michelle's incredible. I love incredible women, so thank you.
All right, please welcome Major Michelle Curran of the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. Thank you so much, first of all.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for serving your country and everything you do.
And the biggest thing I learned is that the key to progress is having the courage to start something when you're not ready, but believing yourself enough to know you will figure it out along the way. So I brought this for you.
Ooh, yes!
Wait,
Which-
it's signed.
In 2 days, you're gonna come to work with me, and you're gonna be a Thunderbird for a day.
Thank you. Oh my gosh!
Absolutely.
So what has Michelle done? Michelle served in the Air Force for 13 years, then an assignment in Japan, deployed in Afghanistan, 5th female pilot in Thunderbird history.
I had a lot of self-doubt early in my career, and I'm under a microscope because I'm the only woman. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I sat on my kitchen floor and I cried.
I had worked so hard to get to this spot, and now that I was there, I was not good enough. There was this disconnect between who I was as a person and who I felt like I had to pretend to be to fit into this fighter pilot culture that I didn't yet understand. I had to prove myself.
And if you wait for the perfect scenario until you feel 100% ready, your progress will slow to a crawl. When it comes to professional regrets, the most common one, not being bold, playing it safe and not making bold choices. And I realized all the opportunities I had let pass me by, I could just see them. I could list them if someone asked me to write them down. So I made a promise to myself. I was gonna start saying yes to those things I felt called to go do, even when they scared me.
There will be days you feel in over your head. And when those days come,
I challenge you to adopt this mindset. Start to associate that feeling of vulnerability with one of possibility.
to be bold and to be brave. As you start to make a habit of making those bold choices, you gain momentum. Before you know it, you're unstoppable. Now is the time.
I appreciate it. We'll see you out there. I've been to a lot of air shows, right?
Yep.
And I grew up 2 hours from here, so you'd think this would not be my first time at Oshkosh, but it is in fact.
Really?
It's a little overwhelming. When I first walked in the gate, I had no idea where I was going, and I was very surprised by how much stuff is here. Now that I have my bearings a little bit, it's pretty awesome.
I'm curious to see the numbers. I know like last year, I think they had like 640,000 people, but you can't, like in a week, you still can't go through everything that's here. I mean, it's everything and anything. Like, it's crazy.
I've probably seen 5% of what's here.
That's wild. So you grew up 2 hours from here. Did you want to get into aviation as a young girl, or like,
So I grew up in a small town, 4,000 people, Medford,
Okay.
Wisconsin. Not a military family, not an aviation family. So I just really had no exposure to it.
Yeah.
In high school, there was one kid in my school, a year younger than me, who started taking lessons in a Cessna.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him about it all the time and asking my parents for flying lessons, and they were like, yeah, we can't afford those. And it just that was then the conversation. And then I stopped thinking about it for a while until it was time to figure out how to pay for college.
Right.
And my dad suggested ROTC, and I was like, no, I want to be a normal college kid. I want to live in the dorms and go to parties, because you don't really know what to expect. That's what you think college is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then we looked into it, and I was like, okay, I don't want to stay in my small town in Wisconsin, and this would give me a lot of opportunities to travel. So I decided to apply for a scholarship and got one. Went off to the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, but as a criminal justice major, planning on doing OSI. So I wanted to be an FBI agent.
Okay,
That was the end game.
Yeah.
I think I really liked the X-Files, which is the most accurate FBI show on TV.
I don't think it's, I mean, I think that's what they do every single day. Yeah, it's busy. It's busy.
Right, exciting. So I wanted to be an FBI agent, and a criminal justice major made sense for that. And so I think when I went and applied for my ROTC scholarship, I kind of asked about the best job options that would set me up for that, because I was going to get college paid for, going to active duty for 4 years to pay that time back as an OSI agent, and also check the box of military time to go to a federal agency because they like that on an application. And then I was going to leave and go to the FBI. Clearly that happened.
Yeah, you took a slight detour. I don't know where that fork in the road occurred, but obviously it was probably somewhere a few years back. What was that fork in the road? Like, how did you, like, all right, hey, now I want to be a pilot?
Yeah, so it was a very distinct moment. There were, throughout ROTC, people would always ask, like, who here wants to be a pilot? And people would raise their hands. Like, every instructor would ask that, and I didn't raise my hand. But I was a little bit intrigued by it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know that much about it. And then we went to Tyndall on a base visit, I think about halfway through college, and I saw my first fighter aircraft take off because I just had no exposure to it before that. Sadly, it was not F-16s, it was 2 F-15s.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Full
right?
AB.
Yeah.
It was dusk. They were taking off for a night sortie, and it was just like jaw drop, goosebumps. Holy crap. Forget the FBI. I'm like already in a position. I'm already an ROTC cadet on scholarship. So all I have to do is start raising my hand. So I got a pilot slot. That part wasn't too bad because I had a decent GPA, decent at physical fitness. And then I got to IFS, initial flight screening out of Pueblo in the DA-20.
Super nice place.
Super nice place. It's like prison, but
I think it's actually run by a prison company.
It could be. Yeah. It has those vibes. I went into that. You get all the way through solo, and I had 0 flight time, no GA background, and a lot of my peers had their private pilot's license, or they just had that exposure, or they had mechanical backgrounds. They grew up working on cars, or they were engineering majors. Criminal justice, not super helpful. So that program was a little bit of a shock because the first few weeks, I just didn't understand any of the things that were being thrown at me. I didn't understand aerodynamics and just like things like the oil system and hydraulics. All of that was new. So there was like one moment, I remember it was like midnight. I had to be up at 5 a.m. the next morning. I'm in my little prison cell, just cramming through all this information that I don't even understand. And I had this realization that I might not be good enough to like do the program, which had never happened in my life before. But it was very short-lived because that program's only about a month long. So I ended up getting there, and when I left, I remember the day I checked out and I went to see my flight commander to get signed off to leave, and he's like, "You did such a good job," and I was like, What? The entire time I thought I was about to wash out of this program. So that one was probably the most aggressive, steep learning curve just from where I was starting.
Yeah.
Then pilot training itself, I really had a great time, honestly. It was super fun, exciting. My class was amazing. Stressful, of course.
Right.
But you're in that stressful situation with like 20 of your best friends, and you're all going through those same hurdles together. So I enjoyed it, was able to track T-38s, and then there definitely was some stress leading up to drop night.
Yeah, no joke.
As you know. I don't know about your class, but my class got 2 fighter aircraft for 25 people, which is pretty standard at the time, I think. Yeah. It's so easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then as you start to get overwhelmed, you get that like snowball effect and like hopeless feeling. The same thing that can happen on a flight. You know, a check ride, one little thing goes wrong, and then you're stressed about that, and it just piles up. So I was not that good at managing it at first, honestly. I flailed around a lot, and if I knew some of the stuff I knew now and went back and did it again, I would have definitely asked for more help.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I needed to prove something, I think.
Absolutely.
And especially almost always being the only woman in the group, that made that pressure a little bit greater under a microscope. So I felt like I had to be the one that knew all the things, and I couldn't ask for help. And so knowing now that actually having the humility to be like, hey, can you spend some extra time explaining that to me? People actually look at that as a strength, not a weakness.
100%.
But my perspective on that was skewed at that point.
Mine was too, and I think that's really good. I didn't really think about that, but asking for help. So when I was going through PIT, we had a C model guy going through PIT, and he was the only fighter guy. In my mind, this guy was up on a pedestal, knew everything, super smart. He's got a PhD now. Like, he's that type of guy.
Smart.
But he was not afraid to like ask questions in class. Like, I would sit there, shut up. If I didn't know something, like maybe I'd ask a bro like later on, or I would try, you know, it was going to be in private. But without fail, he might ask like 15 questions, and it'd be like the simple question. It was the exact thing I was wondering about. Had no fear doing it. And to me, I took away, and that's something I carry today, is like, I think it is a strength. Like, one, there's a little humility in there that you don't know everything, and it doesn't matter what job you're in, but being willing to ask questions and lean on people who have more experience than you, that maybe they work for you, maybe you work for them. Like, that's a tough thing for people to overcome, I think.
Yeah, because I saw it as showing weakness, and like that was going to be looked upon as a fault. And a lot of it was me not understanding fighter pilot culture.
Yeah.
And being new to what, you know, coming in without a lot of perspective, I felt like was all like super type A, like very, very confident. And I was a super shy kid. I'm an introvert. Like, I'm just not, I don't usually speak up in like group settings. And so I was trying to fit into this new culture that I just didn't get yet. And all of that led to me not asking for help when I should have. And so I just struggled along behind the scenes, and it worked out, obviously, but it was painful. Yeah, so I think the number is somewhere around 3% of Air Force fighter pilots are women.
Yeah, it's relatively low.
Yeah, just I think we all know each other because it's so low, which is cool because it's almost like this super close-knit group that automatically forms, and there's always people you can reach out to for stuff, but you will usually find yourself as the only one or maybe one of two in a squadron. And it became less of a challenge as I got older and more confident and more comfortable in my skills as a pilot and in just the dynamics in the squadron. But when I was brand new, I know that IFF, you know, the first exposure to fighter culture kind of, which I think, at least the program I went through, the instructors weren't just exposing you to tactics for the first time. They also wanted to give you this shock of what fighter pilot culture should be.
Right.
And I was coming through in 2011, so it was a really pivotal point for culture in the fighter squadrons.
Yeah, big.
Yeah, you were moving away from kind of what you imagined from Vietnam, where it was a little more rough around the edges, to more what you see now. And so there was some resistance to that shift.
Maybe a little bit.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. Yeah.
So being a woman in a squadron when that was happening, I think there were some people that were frustrated with it. And that's a whole, you can do a whole episode on just that.
Yep.
But IFF specifically, my flight commander, we did our first roll call. My flight commander pulls me aside beforehand and gives me like this pre-brief on all these things that are going to happen. And some of the stuff he said was completely insane to me now. He's like, there could be pornography on the screens. There could be this happening. This is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, if that makes you uncomfortable, you can leave. But
so you specifically like pulled aside and
all by myself in the dude's flight commander's office. That moment sticks out to me. It was like burned into my memory because I was like, this is what I just stepped into, because I didn't really know what to expect.
Right.
And honestly, the stuff he talked about ended up not happening or not being a big deal. But I remember being so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm a brand new lieutenant and this is a major, and I'm just like, what am I getting myself into? So that sticks with me. Once I got off to my first combat squadron in Massawa, I had Smoke and Sharon was another woman, and she was also in my B course class, so we knew each other and were good friends, and that was just so amazing to have another person. But it was stuff that seems insignificant, like not having flight suits with extended zippers so you can use a middle pack in the jet. Or
still, gosh.
Yeah, we can do an episode on that as well. It's quite the process. Or just not having flight gear that fits you, or going somewhere and there's only a male bathroom.
Yeah.
And they just like don't have a women's bathroom because there are no women in that squadron, even though there are.
Right.
Just little stuff like that seems insignificant, but it just grinds on you over time.
Yeah.
And then another thing I always noticed, and this happened my entire career, is being either on a group email or in a briefing or like in an assembly of the whole squadron. So there's 50 of us in there. And whoever's on the stage being like, all right, gents, all right, gentlemen, dudes, men. And like, they don't mean anything bad by it. But every time I was very aware that I was different from everyone else.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would be aware that they did that after they said it. So then they'd be like, and Mace.
And yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'd rather just have you group me with everyone else or call me out. I'd probably just rather be called a gent or a dude.
Yeah.
But again, insignificant by itself. But when, 10 years of that all the time, you're like, I'm not like everyone else.
Yeah.
So the Thunderbirds is such a unique assignment. And you probably experienced some in Viper demo. The coolest parts of my career and the best people I worked with, and also some of the hardest parts of my career.
Really?
The schedule is very difficult, and you're in a little bit of a pressure cooker. So on average, the team's gone about 240 days a year.
That's a lot.
For 3 years.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is hard. That's the hardest part, is you're gone from your family. Every weekend is an air show, which you could be at the coolest air show ever, but you miss a lot of things. When you're gone Thursday to Monday, from March to November, you're going to miss kids' baseball games. You're going to miss graduations and weddings and just all kinds of things. 4th of July weekends, like everything. So I realized it's hard to complain about that because people see the shiny side.
Absolutely.
And they're like, well, you're doing the coolest job on the planet. Wow, how can you complain? But you're still human. You still have families. Like, I met my husband when I first moved to Vegas. And so we got married just a couple of months into my first show season. And so our whole first 3 years of marriage, I was gone 240 days a year. So that's hard, no matter how fun the job is. So you have that side. And then the fatigue of constantly hopping time zones every week, going cross country twice a week. But then you have just, the flying was by far the most fun flying I did.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. Like, flying upside down over the Pacific Ocean at 100 feet, and like, when I got proficient, I would be more aware of what else was going on besides just staring at my HUD.
Yeah.
And I would see like a boat over there, and I'd be like, oh, look, pelicans. And I'd be like, oh, there goes the show center boat. And it's just such a surreal setting. I remember the first couple of shows going from learning this routine and practicing over the desert, over the range, which is just brown dirt.
Yep.
And so there's not a lot of things to distract you, to rolling in and taking the line, and there's like cows and cars and power lines, and I'm just like, holy crap, there's so much going on. But as you get more comfortable in it, again, you realize how cool it is.
100%.
The stuff that you're doing. And then the formation stuff, I, like a lot of fighter pilots who have not done it, probably underestimated the difficulty.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, loops to music, how hard could it be? Flying the loop and the roll when you're not on the source and you're the outrigger is the hardest stuff I did in the whole demo.
I believe it.
Yeah, the roll.
So you always joke, like, coming up initial or whatever, like, number 4 is on the end of the whip there, but like, you're doing loops and rolling, like, you're really on the end of the whip, especially as like the solo, like when you're hopping into the diamond, the whole 6 ship there. Like, how long was that upgrade process? Like, get like, hey, certified by COMAC, you're ready to go. Getting proficient and comfortable is like a whole nother story, but.
Yeah, so showed up in October, started really flying in November as the last team was wrapping up show season. And then COMAC cert was, I think, in like early March.
Okay.
So you have a handful of months there. I flew well over 100 upgrade sorties in that amount of time. Yeah, I was crushing my hour count for any other year.
Right.
We would fly, sometimes we would double turn every day, Monday through Friday. And especially, I worked on my stuff with the lead solo at the time and just doing repetitions of single ship maneuvers, 8 points, 4 points, inverted stuff, all that. And then the diamonds working on like all their diamond specific stuff. And then we come together as a Delta, you start to sequence the show together. You work on flying formation as a Delta, which you could do a whole flight of just working on that over and over because it takes so many repetitions. And then as you get to the point where like, okay, we can go through an entire show sequence, now it's like full throttle because everyone is flying together. It's the same 6 pilots every sortie. The schedule is mirrored just over and over all week long, and that gets exhausting.
Yeah, that's soul crushing hearing like that. Just how busy that is.
We always said that our family is like training season because we were home at night, but for the pilots in the demo, training season was harder than show season because you're not getting the reward of getting all these cool opportunities and the feedback of the crowd and all of that. Right. It's just the grind.